He said, she said. Hillary's calling Bernie a liar, Bernie blasting back. The New York primary, once thought an afterthought, now getting testy. We've got a report from the campaign trail, then the political roundtable weighs in. Then Donald Trump and the RNC kiss and make up, kinda, sorta. But will that make up for the fact that he's still tearing the Republican Party apart? We will take a look at the delegate math and whether the Donald has a clear path to the magic number of 1237, that the delegates he needs to win the nomination. Also, as Atlantic City teeters on the brink, New Jersey considers legalizing gambling in the northern part of the state. We're going to ask a former New Jersey congressman what he makes of the deal. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us. It has been a long week, but it's been less than 3 weeks before the New York primary here, and it starts with Democrats bringing some New York attitude to the campaign. Now, if you want any evidence, just listen to Hillary Clinton, her own words, talking to a climate activist who asked her whether she's taking money from the fossil fuel industry.
I am so sick of the Sanders campaign lying about me. I'm sick of it.
She's sick of it, and she's mad. But can she get even? She will want to attract Sanders supporters down the road when she needs them, but will they be attracted to her? Could be a tough sell. Dominic Carter has spent the past few days at both Bernie and Hillary events in our area. And here's Dom's report from the South Bronx with the socialist senator from Vermont.
We are going to reinvest in the South Bronx and in communities all over this country.
You expected New York to be a factor in the nominating process.
And if we win here in New York, we are going to make it to the White House.
But with the surge of Sanders' candidacy, here we are. New York State is in play for the first time in decades. There was an electric feel in the air. An estimated 15,000 people inside St. Mary's Park, another 2,000 outside. Sanders' popularity amongst young people was clear by the turnout.
We have to vote and we have to talk to our parents. Because the old generation, they're on this Clinton thing.
A star-studded welcome from the likes of Spike Lee, actress Rosario Dawson.
I love seeing you all here. But don't complain to me if you didn't make it your business to bring at least 5 people with you to vote. At least 5.
And Grammy winner Residente.
I am here tonight in support of Bernie Sanders.
Clinton has hammered away that Sanders' ideas are essentially pie in the sky, with no way to pay for them. But his message resonated.
There is no reason why people should not have access to the health care that they need. There is no reason why in this country we should not have the best educational system in the world for all of our people.
Clinton is looking for the New York primary to finally end Sanders' momentum. But then she might have a larger problem. So if it comes down to Hillary as the nominee,
I will not be supporting Hillary Clinton. I'm not a hypocrite.
What if Hillary Clinton wins the nomination? Will you still support the Democrat?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I see one person to burn, and that's it.
The closer we get to the April 19th primary, Sanders is eating into Hillary Clinton's lead in New York. Richard?
Let me bring in our panel here, Dominic Carter, who you just heard from, political journalist and author, former Democratic New Jersey Congressman Steve Rothman, and Andrew Whitman, senior political correspondent. Dom, were you surprised what you heard here? Was those just three random people? Was that the sentiment that it's Bernie or nobody?
Richard, remember, I went through this like you did in 2008 with Hillary and Obama. I was in the room the day on a Saturday when she dropped out. There were a lot of angry, frankly, white women that said they were done with the Democrats. The woman did not, the glass ceiling was not shattered. The woman didn't get her opportunity. They were not voting for Obama. What I saw yesterday, that was not this. What I saw yesterday, first of all, it completely blew my mind. This Sanders event.
The scope of it? How big?
The scope of it. It was electric. Remember, we're on St. Anne's Avenue in the South Bronx, okay? And you walk up to the park, and the Secret Service literally blocked off the entire park. They let the kids play, but they blocked off the entire park. And you felt like you were at a concert. You felt like it was just, frankly, magical. And I say this, bringing third, I now understand why she can't finish him off. This guy, and Richard, it was not just a couple of people that we interviewed. Almost everyone that we talked to, and we talked to quite a few people that were there, they said, oh no, if Sanders does not win the nomination, they will not vote for Hillary. So
But you did an interesting analogy. 8 years ago, they were saying the same thing, and they did vote
Right,
for
and they
Obama
did,
when it was said
right,
and done in
right,
November. But
right.
can you believe that the guy from Vermont, right, the nice Brooklyn Jewish guy who moved up to, where there were cows and Ben and Jerry's, that probably guys joked around in the cloakroom, here's the socialist Bernie Sanders, that he is legitimately, forget about whether he makes it or not, he has changed the dynamic of the campaign. She's been forced to pivot left as a result. In your wildest dreams, did you think this ex-colleague of yours was going to make this much of an impression this campaign?
No.
At least you're honest, yeah.
You know, I had the privilege of serving with Bernie for 10 of my 16 years in the House of Representatives. And he was always very well regarded by all sides as an honorable, authentic, progressive who believed what he believed and was willing to fight for it, but he was willing to make deals and compromises when it would move the ball forward. But nobody, I think, thought that the message of this guy, albeit that he was born and raised in Brooklyn and speaks with a Brooklyn accent, but a guy who was a mayor in Vermont and comes from Vermont, which is a pretty homogeneous place, racially, ethnically, and economically, could have his message resonate with so many people of every background and every part of our society.
She seems in a box because I've been to a couple of things where she's like, you can't give free college to everybody. The math doesn't work. Anybody in their right mind doesn't think that you can throw out Obamacare after all the strife and all the drama that it caused and all of a sudden start from scratch and get a single payer system through. Whether it's good or bad policy, it's just not realistic. It doesn't seem to matter, though.
Well, you know, in that way, perhaps, although Donald Trump is really dangerous to America. I know we're going to probably talk about that later in his advocating using American nuclear weapons in Europe.
We'll get to it.
We'll get to it.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not a danger in that way, but there is this hyperbole on both sides, exaggerated talk. But Bernie is talking about principles, you know, that people who work full time should not have to live in poverty in America, that every American deserves health care, and we can afford it if we reform our tax code and we make the right incentives to grow our economy. Yes, there's real questions about whether all the things he wants can be paid for, but his statement of principles is what's really driving his base.
Well, let me pull you back into this, Dominic, because you heard both of them. You were also with Hillary down in Harlem, right? And she made the pitch. She can't figure out, and her people, how do you answer something, which she's done already, to say, okay, 1 and 1 doesn't equal 20. It's just this new math that doesn't work. Now, she said this till the cows come home. Bernie supporters don't seem to care. They're contributing to him in from a total standpoint, not in dollars necessarily, but in the size of the donations, similar to what we saw with Obama in terms of huge numbers here of people giving smaller donations, which shows they're really passionate. I don't think that she's got an answer. Now, I think Andrew will get to in a second. Will show us the math and what happens between now and Philadelphia at the convention. But she's struggling, isn't she, to respond to it?
Richard, let me be as clear as I can. If I'm Team Clinton, you better not sleep on this guy in New York. You are correct. We were there at the Apollo Theater. Regular Hillary energizing the base. It was nice. Richard, 15,000 people in the park. 2,000 people outside, about 1,000 that were standing behind me.
In the South Bronx.
In the South Bronx, the South Bronx, as the record says. But Richard, I also want to be clear about this. Here's why you don't sleep on this guy. New York wakes up this morning. You know what he did this morning? I know you know. But this guy, a major presidential candidate with the Secret Service detail, went to rap radio station Hot 97 and was actually in the studio. Now remember, he's got a problem connecting with blacks and Latinos. I didn't see that in the South Bronx yesterday. He's resonating. Think about this. How can Hillary compete with a candidate that at 7 o'clock in the morning is inside a rap radio station on the air with the DJs? How do you compete with that?
And a 74-year-old guy from Vermont to boot here.
74-year-old guy from
All
Vermont.
right, Andrew, now, it's a nice story, but as we say, the math is the math in terms of how you pay for it, but also in terms of the delegate math. Explain where we are, where we could be on the 17th, and how the road looks to Philadelphia.
Well, all right, first of all, delegate math gets pretty complicated, even on the Democratic side, which is hands down the easier of the two parties to explain and to understand. Here's where the Democratic race is right now. Clinton's at 1,243 delegates. Sanders has 980. You need 2,383 to win the nomination. And this is just pledged delegates. This is not the super delegates from key endorsers like Congressman Rothman used to be. So that's where we are today. What needs to happen going forward for Hillary to win the nomination? Well, she needs 1,140 more delegates to win. And in the remaining races, there are about 2,042 delegates that are still out there. That means Hillary needs to win about 56% of the remaining available delegates to win the nomination. But because of the proportional delegate system and because of Hillary's continued strength in urban centers, she can probably get there if she averages about 46 or 47% of the vote. She can still lose, Richard, every remaining primary and still win the nomination outright. And again, that scenario doesn't account for those super delegates, the elected Democrats, DNC members, and other key players who are also delegates free to vote for whomever they choose. If you add them to the mix, Hillary's path gets a whole lot easier. If we add the super delegates to Clinton's current count, she goes up to 1,712 delegates. That means she needs 671 more to get to where she needs, 2,254, to win the nomination. In other words, she needs just 30% of what's left to become the Democratic nominee.
But that then speaks to limping to the finish line. And the idea is clearly, as we'll get to the Republicans in a second, Trump's momentum has clearly slowed, at least if the last 2 weeks are any indicator. Hillary, you would have thought, after the push that she had in the South, after Florida, et cetera, that she'd be picking up momentum and she'd be starting to wrap things up, certainly in her home state. The numbers you're saying, she's still the prohibitive favorite in New York?
Absolutely. A much easier path to the nomination overall. And in New York, she's still ahead in the polls. Yes, we're seeing support coming out at the rallies that you attended, Dominic, but keep in mind, we've seen similar-sized Bernie Sanders rallies across the country in states that Hillary has won or come very close in. And keep in mind, proportional delegate system throughout every Democratic primary. There are no winner-take-all states. So even if she loses by a point or 2 points in New York, she's still going to be very close to Sanders in the delegates. So yes, the optics might not look good if she loses New York by a couple of points, but it doesn't hurt her in the overall delegate math. And I would also point out that the rally that you were at, overwhelmingly young people who were there. The older, more established Democrats who are part of the Democratic establishment, particularly black and Latino Democrats, city Democrats, who see a quid pro quo with a Hillary nominee and have dealt with Hillary Clinton before, much more likely to come out for Hillary Clinton in the primary. We're seeing a lot of observational reasons why she might be concerned, but I still think she has strong core support in New York and is still probably the favorite to win, even as the poll numbers begin to fluctuate.
Do you believe there is concern among Democrats, national Democrats, that Hillary Clinton, even if she does get to Philadelphia, even if she's the nominee, is a more, if not damaged nominee than what was once thought, but she's going in with zero in the way of enthusiasm or momentum, even though it would be historical, first woman president and all that? Is there concern that for all the flaws of Bernie Sanders and the electability issues, there at least is a perceptible enthusiasm around him that there certainly isn't to her? Coattails and all the rest of the concerns.
Richard, you're right, and your concern or your mentioning of the possibility of her being seen as limping to the finish line is real, but I think it's important to remember also the general election isn't for more than 7 months, and we still don't know who the Democrat's going to run against. If the Democrat runs against Donald Trump, I think there'll be a very clear comparison between the two, and Hillary should win in a landslide. Even if it's Cruz, the Democrat will win, whether it's Bernie or Hillary, in great numbers. What the Democrats have to worry about is that the Republicans will nominate someone other than Cruz
what you
or
did
Trump.
was you gave me a perfect lead-in. Thank you, and an easy tease. Now, we talked about the Democrats, but we shouldn't be surprised by some of the crazy things that have come out of Trump's mouth here. He's been saying the same things for 25 years, and if you think I'm just, throwing numbers out, I got proof to back me up. The trouble is, now what he's saying really matters.